Well, I'm so happy to be here with all of you guys. Love the hat, Candace. Definitely giving me the festive spirit that I need to get through this morning. So yeah, definitely exciting seeing everyone being so engaged in the chat. Just love getting to be here and speak with all of you as we're getting into what always feels like a very crazy, bit scary time of year. And ultimately, we're all here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that intimidating. There's a lot of things going on, of course, but I hope that by the end of the session, you'll feel, excuse me, feel a little bit better about how to go about, approaching storytelling with your year-end fundraising appeal. So this next session here is going to be how to inspire giving through powerful storytelling. So let's dive into it. First off, thank you so much, Candace, for that introduction. I am an account supervisor at Community Roots, as she said, but I started out here actually working in channel. So executing on these strategies, really creating ad copy, working in Meta, Google Ad Grant, landing page design. So definitely very familiar with that execution of our story and how we go about communicating that through marketing. So through that now, I'm really excited to get to work directly with our account managers and our nonprofit partners on more of the strategist side to make sure that we're always implementing the best practice, pushing that needle, and making sure that we are getting the best results month after month. So getting into this first question here, and I'm not sure if we have the poll set up, so it might just be more of a chat and conversation, but I am curious. Oh, we do have one. Amazing. Thank you, Candace. I'm curious though, before work this morning, did you read any news, go on social media, or open any sort of non work related email? Exactly what I suspected. Pretty much everybody. I would be, I am impressed with the one individual that did not do any of that. It's definitely hard with just the amount of things that are constantly pushing for our attention, constant availability across all these different mediums. And then going into the next question here, you read all these things, you've engaged with a bunch of content in the morning, but by the end of today, how likely do you think you are to remember what you saw this morning? And also, I apologize. I was feeling a little sassy when I was writing the answers here. So my brain is still full, likely one to two things, and then no chance. Nothing's going to stick by the end of the day. So yeah, likely one to two things are going to stick. And so ultimately, why is that? And, there's so many different things that we can break out as to why only a couple things are going to stay with us throughout the day. And we're here to talk through what was unique about those one to two things that are going to stay with you. And again, there's so much competition for our attention across so many different mediums. We're always supposed to care about so many different things at the same time, and it can be really challenging. And I think that we're seeing a lot of discussion around donor fatigue and just what they should be paying attention to, what they should be caring about, and it's going to be different person to person. But through that, when we're getting into year end and talking about fundraising, we need to really start identifying what is it that's creating that stickiness, so that one to two thing, by the end of the day that someone remembers, can be your organization's mission and why they should care about your cause. So through that, your story matters, and we're here to talk through what is going to make that story sticky, effective, compelling, and really inspiring to have somebody, again, keep that message with them throughout the day, and then also remember to take an action alongside you. So of social media users who do donate, there's almost 60% of them that said that the compelling storytelling is what really motivated them to make that donation at the end of the day. So today here is going to be our agenda, what we're working through together. How to identify the story. So first off, what should your story for your nonprofit be ultimately? How do you go about identifying that? The key ingredients to effective storytelling that's going to inspire someone to actually take an action. So what goes into that story? Then lastly, how do you integrate that? How do you push out that message through your digital marketing channels? How do you make sure that that story is seen and heard and really lands depending on where someone is getting that, specific piece of your story? So starting off, how to identify your story for year-end fundraising appeals. I want to start out with these different questions when we're thinking through this. Why you? So, why specifically your nonprofit? Who is it that you're talking to? So, who are your audiences? What does your data tell you? And why now? Let's dive into all of those questions. So, first, why should someone choose your nonprofit specifically when there's over 1 million nonprofits in the United States alone? There's going to be a lot of nonprofits that are going after the same type of donor as you, that maybe are in the same cause, same sector, that are going to have a lot of individuals that you're competing to gain their attention, to get that traction. So, why you? Why should someone care about your nonprofit? So, when you're determining what should go into your story, what you're telling people, you want to think through what makes your mission necessary and what makes it necessary to address right now as well. Why should they care about your cause, and invite them into that mission with you? What is your unique approach to solving the problem? So we know that there's a bunch of problems out there that need to be solved, and there's probably a lot of different approaches, a lot of people, a lot of organizations, both nonprofit and not, that are addressing it. So what is unique and specific about your approach that is going to get the attention and get someone to care about why you're the correct nonprofit, why you're the one that they should support? And also, there might be a hard time thinking through a very unique approach, but what's the unique lens that you can tell that story through of how you approach solving this problem? Then lastly, how are you equally, if not more effective than similar organizations? So again, talking about how you are setting yourself apart, how you are addressing this issue. Next, who are you telling your story to? And also, what does that audience care about at the end of the day? So we know that there's only so many things that we can focus attention on, but I really do believe in audience segmentation and thinking through how we can customize the way that we're telling our story depending on who we're talking to. So at the end of the day, I have these examples here. Does a major gift donor give for the same reason as someone that's donating $5? And if somebody is donating and supporting your cause year after year for 20 plus years, are they going to engage with the same thing as somebody that is only 20 years old and supporting you for the very first time? So start thinking through who it is that you're telling your story to, and what are they going to care about most, and make sure that that's the way that you're communicating to them through. So that's going to come out in a lot of different platforms of where segmentation can come into play. Definitely email marketing is a huge aspect of this, but also platforms like Meta, as well as other channels, YouTube and display, even thinking through audiences and, the age demographics. There's going to be a lot of differences and unique natures of what people care about, what engages them. Also, specifically to your cause, somebody that is supporting a food bank might have very different motives of what they care about, what inspires them, than somebody that's donating to a research foundation. Next up here, we've got listen to your data. So most of you are probably not running marketing or, really having appeals for the first time this year going into year-end fundraising. So you've been communicating over email, you've been posting on organic social mediums. Let's look into that data. What have people already been engaging with? What have they already shown you that they care about and respond to? Take all that information in, analyze it, utilize it, and create that story based off of what people are going to respond to based on what the data says. There's always room, again, to test more, continue pushing through, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If we're seeing that your particular audience that you're speaking to cares about something and responds to something, then organization that's very different than yours, let's focus in on what your audience is going to care about and be inspired by. So next up here, we've got why now? So like I said, and like you all said, you've been engaging with news, you've been engaging with social media this morning, emails. There's so many things going on in our world, and there's so many things to care about. And we know that it's very possible for donor behavior to shift in the way that they give, when they give, what they give, and how much, based on what's going on in a particular year. So we saw that happen with the pandemic and what nonprofits and causes people started to gravitate towards. We know that that's going to be the case when natural disasters occur, or a conflict going on in the world with Ukraine this year. So why now? How do you fit into the narrative of this year? And I do want to definitely caution you guys of not trying to make this fit. If your organization is not, in a cause or, addressing a particular problem that's super relevant to something going on this year, then don't try and force that. But you'd be surprised of just how that narrative can fit in together to make sure that you're part of that story of how are you addressing part of that problem of what people care about most in this particular year. But I also want to just reassure you that it's very necessary to think through those circumstances that are specific and unique to this individual year, because people aren't going to donate to you for the same reason year after year. And it's very possible to lose your loyal donors if there's something that becomes more pressing and more urgent in a given year. So think through what are the unique circumstances? How does your story fit into that narrative of what is an urgent need right now? And also, if they've already contributed this year, because say you are a disaster relief organization, why should they give to you again now at the end of the year? All right. So got lots of information going on, but want to continue pushing through into this next section. So key ingredients. So what goes into an effective story to inspire someone to engage with your organization and to donate? So first, what makes a story powerful and compelling for fundraising in your opinion? So if you want to just put some answers in the chat, what are some of the things that you find to be really powerful when it comes to storytelling? Impact, something that's relatable. Yeah, protagonist overcoming a challenge, the success, evokes emotion, empathy. Yeah, you're spot on. And we don't have too much time today, and you probably all don't need to necessarily even look at your nonprofit's page, but I invite you to look at your current organization's donation or appeal page. And without further context, we're deeply embedded into these causes. We know all the background of, the things that we've talked through of your impact metrics and why, people should care. But if they've never heard of you before, they're not working for the nonprofit, does that landing page convince you to take an action for your cause and with your specific nonprofit? All right. So yeah, definitely going to just remind you to go back to that after this presentation today and really look into your existing donation page that's on your website, but for the year end, if you have a specific year end page as well, think through some of these questions and are you convinced? So getting into some of these key ingredients of some of the things that you're already bringing up in the chat, which is awesome. What, can we pull together to really, diagnose what are the specific ingredients that we can quantify and come together to create a really impactful story to somebody that maybe already knows you a little bit, or maybe has no idea what your organization does. This is the first time they're hearing about you. What is going to inspire someone to connect and to give? So first thing up here, we have succinct and readable. People have extremely short attention spans. We're all in the same boat. There's so many things that are trying to grab our attention. So first thing is getting them in the door of, making sure that they're invited in and they see it. But we only have a few seconds in order for that attention to be grabbed. And having something that is succinct and readable does definitely help with that short attention span of we don't want them to have to sift through long paragraphs, a block of text. So things like bolded impact metrics, multiple call to actions, having things in all caps, really highlighting things through visual aids as well. So intermittent like imagery as well as video content. This can be done through your landing page, but also your email appeals. If you're sending out any direct mail, this is applicable across all different types of mediums for the way that you are telling your story. So this is an example here. Again, looking at this page, there's imagery, there are very clear call to actions. There's different size fonts to have the eye draw into the things that you care about them reading and seeing most. There's impact metrics. There's things that are in all caps and bolded. We're inviting everyone in with the all caps everyone on the right hand side here. So thinking through how even you visually communicate your message through text. Proof of concept as well. So we have, 70% of donors agree that knowing that their donation makes an impact is important to who they choose to support. And especially with access to internet and different social media channels, there's no hiding. If you are an organization that has the the data to back it up of how you're making an impact, how you're making a cause, you want that to be seen. You want that to be heard. We've seen organizations that are 100 years old at this point that have lost a lot of their supporters because they are more of a figurehead and they tell a great story, but we're realizing that they aren't doing much with those donation funds. So proof of concept. So ensuring that there's clarity of the scale of your problem and how you are specifically solving or overcoming that challenge. Showcasing how that donation is going to be utilized. So if I'm giving you my money, what are you going to do with it? And I want to make sure that I see the results of that. So thinking through how you can translate, how you can communicate the way in which donation funds over the past several years have created real change, have impacted that solution. So that can be done through a lot of different mediums, but recent impact reports and statistics for your particular cause, thinking through historical accomplishments that you can include, your annual report. I know so much effort goes into creating annual reports, and then it's not always utilized and communicated to your existing supporters, but new people as well as a way to engage them. Proof of why your organization's solution to this problem works. And then a big one here that I think is commonly understood, and you guys, definitely address this in the chat of the things that you think make a story powerful, is that emotional connection. But how does one facilitate that emotional connection? I think that we're all in the nonprofit space. We work with nonprofits day in, day out. It's very easy for us to think this is a no-brainer, but not everyone's going to automatically have a connection to your specific cause. So it's up to us to create that environment and where someone that may not have an experience with a particular issue still is able to see that it matters and cares. Because at the end of the day, we are all knowledgeable people with so much access to information. We know about all the problems that there are in the world. And it's really difficult and somewhat impossible to give the same attention and care to every single one. So the ones that we do end up donating, the ones that we take action, we pay attention to the most, are the ones that stay with us through that emotional connection, whether it's because we have personal experience with that issue, that challenge, or we know somebody in that situation, or we are creating and facilitating that opportunity for them to see that firsthand. And especially through different digital marketing mediums with video content and imagery, those visual aids, it's very possible to create that connection where there wasn't one before. So invite your donor into that story as a person. Have them be part of that story if they didn't have that connection before. You can do that through a lot of different mediums, but testimonials are a really great way to share that emotional connection. And you can, really get that from a lot of different types of individuals that are part of the story. Beneficiaries, I think, are the best place to start, but that can be a little bit of a challenging situation if people don't want to be part of the narrative, if they don't want their story to be shared. So we have to be a little bit careful when we're talking about testimonials, but volunteers, staff members as well, seeing how those that are directly connected talk and are passionate about the cause can elicit that same emotion from somebody that's a potential supporter. Also, something that we find to be really successful with, again, just different mediums of storytelling that we can push this message out, push the story out, is having a particular individual that we're highlighting that can be kind of the face of your appeal. Be the face of that story. Having that one individual that you're thinking of when you think of this challenge and how it's impacted them with the work that you do. So thinking through that individual story of impact, the challenge before your organization, how your organization has helped, and the ongoing impact in their life. And imagery and video content is one of the best ways that you can create that connection with another human being through the internet. So just as a reminder here, which again, I think it's easy for us to just assume that this is understood, but we can sometimes glean over it. But people give to people, not necessarily organizations. So create that connection with other human beings and why we want to ultimately take care of one another. Then we got strong call to action here. So having clarity ultimately alongside that emotional connection, because emotional connection and that emotional appeal is important, but it can't be the only thing. If you go too far in that direction, people could either just have the, ultimate despair, they don't want to pay attention, it hurts too much, or there's just not enough for them to see the solution of what do I do in response to this feeling? How do I play a part? So having a strong call to action, clarity, what are you fundraising for? What is the goal? Ultimately, why should they donate right now as well? So do you have a donation match? Is it a specific initiative? Are you fundraising for a particular need right now? Is it an urgent need? All those things should be part of the story. And then also, if you have the ability, and there are going to be a lot of variances for your particular cause, for your particular organization, if there's direct impact metrics, like this example in the corner here for a food bank, it's very easy to put a dollar amount to an exact outcome. That's not possible for all organizations and all causes, but as much impact focused language rather than just asking to donate, asking them and inviting them to support. What does that support entail? What does that get the individual that they just saw in a video that they connected to emotionally? So having that impact focused language, how does that dollar translate into impact? Then we've got cast a vision finally. With the individualization of your story, if you bring it down to that level of one person that you're creating that connection to, I think that draws somebody in, and it can make a big difference. But you also aren't helping just one person as an organization. So casting a vision is the opportunity to go from that individual scale and push it out of what is the big vision in a year. What are you able to accomplish? Who are you helping? It's not just that one person. It's so many individuals that have stories just like that individual. So casting a vision through your storytelling, what would be the result of you reaching that goal? What is that outcome if we're able to achieve this together during year-end fundraising? What would the consequence be of not reaching that goal? So kind of the two sides of that coin, of the positive of like, we're striving this together, this is what we can accomplish together, but also the negative side of that, of what happens if this goal is not met ultimately? What's going to happen to these individuals' lives if this does not occur? And then also, how does this particular goal, this particular fundraising amount, tie into the vision of your nonprofit ongoing sustainably? There's never going to be an end to the donation ask. So really tying it back to what is the ultimate outcome of this particular appeal going to mean for your organization moving forward in the bigger vision. Alrighty, so we've got one more section here. So how to integrate your storytelling across marketing channels. And I recognize I am close on time here, so apologize if I go a little bit quickly, but we will have some time for questions in the lounge afterwards as well. So now that we've defined what our story is for your particular organization and what should go into that story to make it impactful, if nobody sees that story, if it doesn't, get pushed out to individuals and maybe isn't executed in the best possible manner, that impactful, inspiring story could fall short and couldn't have the impact that it could. So, when thinking through how to actually implement this storytelling into your year-end appeal to inspire that giving, let's focus in on these 3 C's. So, we've got our creative assets, continuity, and then channel customization. So, starting out here with creative assets, I think is the most clear and obvious when it comes to digital marketing. Having that ability to create an emotional connection, have that individual as the face of your campaign, the visual aids of that are one of the easiest ways to draw somebody in and to connect and keep them top of mind throughout the day. So, they are remembering that is that 1 to 2 story that stick from the morning to the end of the day. So, thinking through that, photos and graphics are one of the ways that you can really implement, highlighting that individual from the story of impact. But with that, we also know that there's a lot of opportunity to test when it comes to implementation on a channel like organic social or Meta, YouTube ads, display ads. So having things that are across channels that include your branding. So we want, especially if it's a newer individual that is seeing part of the story, we want to make sure that they're able to find you again. So include that branding, make sure that your name is on it, have that logo, have that ability to push your own brand awareness through these assets. You can also test infographics versus it being centered on people. Coming back again to that initial point of people are going to care about different things depending on what your cause is. So definitely always recommend testing, because you might be surprised of what people end up responding to more than others. So again, going back to the data as well, analyzing that data, you can see what people have been responsive to throughout the year, but definitely recommend focusing on those impact metrics through something like an infographic, but also having people-centered imagery as well. Another great recommendation for best practice when it comes to photos to tell that story and to bring in those different aspects of your storytelling is graphics or imagery that have call to actions on them, or have text overlays with why they should care. What is, all those different key ingredients that we just discussed for storytelling. The image itself could be a way in which we're drawing people in, because that's where the eye is going to go immediately. So thinking through the different stages of your campaign as well, making sure that there is clarity in what that call to action is. So thinking through the pre-wire stage of your ask, the Giving Tuesday specific ask, end of year, urgency, gratitude, all these things that I know we talked a bit about in the last session that'll be talked about throughout the rest of the day as well. Having those call to actions on your assets can help to keep that, phase storyline continuing on these different channels. Then also a very clear one, but just execution of the storytelling, making sure that we're customizing those photos as well for the different channels that we're implementing them on. So thinking aspect ratio, size, the text, the requirements ultimately by whatever channel we're implementing this through. So here's a few examples of that, just thinking through some of those best practice examples or opportunities for testing. Infographics of those very clear-cut impact metrics. What is $1 going to do for your organization? And you can do a lot of testing there as well of, starting it at higher than $1. If there's any urgency, so if there's a date that you want to be communicating, if there's a donation match, having that integrated into your asset, but also having that people focus. So on the right here, we have a lot of examples of graphics that include those testimonials right there on the image. So definitely be careful of having too much text. We do want it to be very easy and clear, and again, short attention spans, but testing around copying or the different copy options that you can incorporate here, the key information that you want to include for those different phases, and if there's a specific theme or brand that you have for your particular initiative, make sure that's included in the the creative as well for these different photos. So with that same idea in mind, the video that you can include. think this is one of the best ways that you can really showcase your story and to create that emotional connection with individuals. And it doesn't always have to be a very professional, you know, ad specific video either. We've seen video content that is, you know, B-roll or just somebody with their, you know, iPhone sharing a video of themselves giving that testimonial or being in your, you know, food bank warehouse. Sometimes that engages people more because it feels like organic content that is in their feed or coming in through their email. It feels very personalized to them. But there's a lot of different ways that you can go about video creation for telling your story. There's the shorter iterations that are more ad focused. So thinking 30 seconds to about 2 minutes for those different placements, implementation on Meta, YouTube advertising, including that in email, landing page as well. Also having long form content is definitely an option. So that is something in the screenshot down here, a partner has the, you know, videos that they've created that are more for those ad placements, but then the call to action to get people engaged for Giving Tuesday specifically was that they had created a much longer video that was more like a webinar of all the work, the program that they were working on and fundraising for specifically. They had an online event on Giving Tuesday to where they could watch that video for, you know, major gifts. That's a great idea of how to showcase the impact of all their support over the years and painting that vision of what they can do together next year as well. So just an idea, if you have the resources to create video, you can do the short form for the, you know, ad content, but also that long form can have a lot of function as well with that type of online engagement community building. So making sure that we're, again, front loading that branding, having that story of impact that highlights 1 to 2 individuals. We're making sure that we're telling your campaign story, highlighting donor impact, inviting that donor into the story, and having a strong call to action so they know what they're supposed to do by the end of that video. Continuity of story is the next one here. So thinking through all the different, you know, type of digital marketing channels that you can incorporate into how you go about your year-end fundraising appeal. We want to make sure if somebody is seeing things across different channels that there isn't a disconnect in the story that they're being told. So we know it takes several touch points for someone to actually take an action. So we want them to see things across Meta and then to get that video remarketing on YouTube, to see that display ad, have that in their email. We want to make sure through that, though, we've got consistent branding. So if you have key phrases or tags, your color scheme is the same throughout, overall campaign theme is communicated, your core campaign information is incorporated. So if you have a donation match, that needs to be seen across all of your channels. Goal and timeline needs to be consistent and communicated. And also a great opportunity when you are highlighting one story of impact is to have that same individual included in creative across channels, but potentially a different photo or a different video. So it is still registering that this is something that my brain should pay attention to. It's not the exact same content, it's not the exact same photo, but I recognize it and it makes me stop and pay attention. So just an example of that, looking at these different mediums, you can see consistency of our theme, of the color, of the individual that we focused on as a story of impact, but also scaling that of, you know, the context of casting a vision. What are the other individuals that are part of this program and initiative? So again, across channels, having that continuity of your theme, your message, and what you want to communicate as your call to action. The last thing we've got here, because I know I'm at time, is channel customization. And you guys have the opportunity to come to a lot of amazing sessions today that are specific about how to go about implementing in these different channels. Having Meta, having Google Ads, having Microsoft Ad Grant now, which is amazing, YouTube display. All of these channels have different best practices. We have talked extensively about all of the things that are great ingredients to create a really effective, inspiring story to get someone to donate. But the way in which we push out that story is going to sometimes feel like you're having to cut yourself off to stay in those best practices, because a lot of these channels, you only have a couple of sentences. you only have a very short amount of space to communicate that story. That's why the creative assets, the photos, the video can be so important, because it gives you more of that space and more of that attention. But making sure that we're staying in those best practices, making sure that we're incorporating what is the main piece of information that they need to see, what's hooking them. Is it a long form content piece, or is it an initial hook in a very short 1 to 2 sentences that we're able to communicate? And what needs to be in those 1 to 2 sentences to stay in those best practices? Also, again, thinking through who your audience is. Are you remarketing on this particular channel? Thinking through Meta or YouTube advertising. Is this audience already familiar with my initiative, with my cause, what the appeal is? Are they my donor? Are they a brand new individual? Making sure that we're communicating to them with our story based off of who they are in relation to our cause. So yeah, just really thinking through what is going to be most impactful when we're customizing by each channel. And so that can definitely look differently across each of our different mediums when it comes to digital marketing, but really focusing in on what is going to leave that, imprint on someone's brain so it sticks throughout the day. So I appreciate everyone's time and attention. You've all been great, having all these amazing questions, and I apologize for not being able to engage. I see Candace is responding to some of these questions, and I know that we have the opportunity to also get into the lounge and talk through this a bit more. But really, again, just coming into the next month and a half, there's going to be so much competition for people's brain space, for their time, their attention. And we want to make sure that we are really focusing in on the story that we're telling them, how we're telling them, and what is going into that story to make sure we're inspiring them with that very minimal amount of time that we get to attract their attention. So we definitely would love to continue this conversation with you guys. We are offering a free year-end review if you're interested in learning more about how Community Boost can maximize your year-end marketing results. So definitely recommend continuing this conversation, both for this year, but also throughout next year. How are we telling your story of the impact that you made in these next couple months? How are we continuing that storytelling? So highly recommend booking that one-on-one year-end review with our experts so we can talk further about how to inspire people through your storytelling.